Testing. Hello everyone, my name is Caleb Hoover. I'm a PGY1 clinical pharmacy resident at a level 1 trauma center located in Ohio. Today I'm going to be discussing the pharmacy residency match, and specifically we're going to be looking at data from the last 5 years of PGY1 residency match data in order to review the trends as well as glean some key details that I think will be beneficial for those of you considering pharmacy residency. I recently went through this pharmacy residency process and the process of actually participating in the match, so all of this is pretty fresh to me. And through all of the research and data that I've looked through, I've gleaned some key details that I think would have been beneficial for me to know prior to the entire match process. And so I'm hoping that this video will be a service to you and something that I can provide you with so that you have a better perspective when you participate in the match and pursue a pharmacy residency. So all the information within this video today is specifically discussing PGY1 program data, not PGY2s. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the term PGY, that just means postgraduate year. And so a PGY1 would be a first year pharmacy residency, and PGY2 would be a second year pharmacy residency. Now, what specifically is a pharmacy residency? Everyone in the United States who goes to a school of pharmacy and graduates with a Doctor of Pharmacy degree has generally the same curriculum, meaning that we all graduate with the same credentials, being a Doctor of Pharmacy or a PharmD degree. A pharmacy residency is a one-year program in the case of a PGY1 and can be up to 2 years that provides additional training and opportunities to further develop and grow as a pharmacist and really serve as a bridge from academic knowledge to clinical practice and experience. It provides you with additional credentialing that you would need in order to pursue a specific area of pharmacy. And in general, when people talk about PGY1s, they typically think about clinical residencies, which would be in a hospital or institutional setting. Those are synonymous. Now, there are PGY1 programs within community-based pharmacy care, and there are also some new PGY1 programs in managed care. But in general, if you are considering pursuing a residency and you're watching this video, you're likely considering a clinical residency position at a hospital. Now, why would you need to pursue a residency? If you're wanting to work in an area of clinical practice, such as a specialized area like critical care, internal medicine, emergency medicine, oncology, or even if you're just wanting to work as a staff pharmacist in a hospital, hospital pharmacy is different from retail and is different in such a way that you need additional training and credentials in order to be successful as a pharmacist, to be safe, and to provide excellent care to patients. And so pharmacy residencies are the means whereby a new graduate, new pharmacist can get that additional training and enter into the workforce into a hospital setting and be successful in that setting. It also serves as a stepping stone for a second year of pharmacy residency, which would enable you to pursue a more specialized area of clinical practice, such as internal medicine or critical care, like I mentioned. It also enables you to more quickly obtain board certification, which is another means whereby pharmacists can obtain additional credentialing. PGY1s are generally thought of as generalist residencies, meaning they provide you a variety of opportunities and experiences within pharmacy and are much more broad in their scope as opposed to PGY2s, which are narrow in their focus and only focused on one specific area of pharmacy. Now, what is the match? The match is the actual process whereby candidates or applicants, and that would be people who have graduated from pharmacy, candidates and applicants are applying to obtain a residency position at a site that offers a residency program. The match and the actual pharmacy residencies, they're accredited and managed by the American Society of Health System Pharmacists. They do all the accreditation standards and accredit the PGY1 programs in order to ensure that PGY programs within the United States are designed similarly, meeting the same components and providing the same experiences that will prepare pharmacists well after that training. They use something called the National Matching Services website and database to actually conduct the match. And when I say match, I mean where pharmacy candidates actually obtain a pharmacy residency position. That's called the match. And I will discuss a little bit more about what the match is in the next slides. So this data is from the National Matching website, and I provided the link below this diagram. But this is providing data for the PGY1 and PGY2 programs in the United States over the past few years from 2013 to 2022. And we see that in general, the number of applicants for the match increases each year, and the number of programs that are offered also increases each year. There is a decrease from in the number of applicants in 2022 from 2021. I think there's a variety of reasons why that is the case. I'm not going to be discussing that in this video, but in general, when you think about the match and think about pursuing a residency program, you should think that the number of programs is increasing, so you have more opportunities to obtain a residency position, and the number of applicants is also increasing, and thus that means your competition for those residency positions is increasing. Now, the match itself is conducted in phases. And so when we get to the next slide, we'll talk specifically about data from those phases. But there's 2 phases for the match. And in order to participate in the match, in order to get a pharmacy residency, you need to be graduating from a school of pharmacy, obtaining a doctor of pharmacy degree, and you have to submit applications to specific residency sites. And all of that is done through the match website. Those applications are composed of a CV, curriculum vitae, which is a special resume, more broad and detailed than just your typical job applications or resumes for non-hospital related or healthcare related fields. So that's one component. Another component would be letters of recommendation from clinical preceptors or pharmacy faculty. Another component would be a cover letter that's specifically expressing your interest in that specific residency site. And then there's a couple other components, but in general, you would submit all of that to the residency sites. They would review your applications. They would extend an offer to interview. You would interview with that site, and then you would submit a rank list, and your site would submit a rank list. That information from those rank lists ends up going into the match, and that is what we see here is the number of applicants who apply, the number of programs offered, and the number of programs remaining after the match takes place. So this is the data that I have compiled over the past 5 years, or data from the past 5 years, and have included in this chart. I can provide a link to this chart in the notes below, but we're going to be going through this chart piece by piece and discussing each component and hopefully gleaning some key details that I think will be important for you as you consider pursuing a pharmacy residency and as you consider participating in the match. Now, the one thing that I forgot to mention is that when applicants are actually doing their rankings for the match, ranking just means I am putting sites in order of preference from 1 down through however many sites I have, so 1, 2, 3, 4, in order of preference that I would want to go to or be a resident if I matched. Sites do the same thing. When they interview with applicants, they are putting in rank order from 1 being their most preferred and on down of applicants that they want to be a resident for their site. And they go into the match, and there's a large algorithm, but it pairs up the ones with ones, and it just continues until everybody or every site that has submitted a rank list either has a match or does not have a match because they didn't have applicants for particular reasons who match their criteria. An important thing to know about the match is that it always favors the applicant. So it's in your best interest as an applicant to make those rank lists based on what you actually prefer and not trying to figure out how the site is ranking you. We'll get into all of this information more. But in general, that's how the match works. You submit applications, do interviews, go through the match, and then in phase 2, which would be the second phase after phase 1, phase 2 is the exact same process, just with the remaining applicants and remaining residency sites who didn't match in the first phase. So in the green, we see the combined data for Phase 1 and Phase 2 for PGY1 residency programs. And like I mentioned on the previous slide, we see that in general, the number of sites increases each year, which is positive because that means there's more opportunity for those of you considering pursuing a residency. There's more opportunity for you to actually obtain a residency position. Now, at the same time, in general, we have seen that the number of applicants increases each year. And as I mentioned before, 2022 is kind of an odd year where we saw a decrease in 700 applicants this year. And again, I think there's a lot of reasons why that may be the case. But in general, you can expect that the number of applicants is going to increase each year. Now, specifically, what we've seen in this year, which is really encouraging, is that of the candidates who applied for the match, 76.5% of them matched in Phase 1 or Phase 2. That combined data, 76.5% of them matched. And for the year's graduates, which is just underneath this box, that's specifically talking about that year's graduates applying for that year's match. So for example, for this year, the year's graduates would be people who graduated with their Doctor of Pharmacy degree in 2022 applying for a residency in 2022. So 73.1% of them were able to obtain a match, which is really encouraging, especially for those of you who are going to be graduating in this next year and considering a residency position and participating in the match. Now, one key detail I want to discuss at this time is that just because you do not match or haven't matched in the past does not mean you can't apply again in future years for a match. So that's why the year's graduate data, I placed that here because I wanted you to understand that there's another 3.2% or 3.4%, excuse me, of applicants who didn't graduate in 2022 but were able to obtain a residency position, which is really encouraging, especially if you don't end up matching in the first year. Now, when we specifically look at Phase 1, which is conducted the exact same way as Phase 2, where you submit applications, have interviews, and do your rank list, there were 5,100 applicants, and 71.9% of those applicants ended up matching in Phase 1, which is really encouraging and has increased since prior years. Now, when we specifically look at the way that they, or how they matched and how they ranked sites, we see that 58.9% of them who matched were able to get a match at their #1 preferred site, which is really great. And we see that in general, you can expect about that 58.9% or so to obtain your first choice. Now we see that another 22.6% of them actually obtained a residency at their second choice, and then another 9% obtaining a residency at their third choice. So I want to just quickly say that when you are ranking sites, it's important for you to match, or excuse me, it's important for you to rank sites based on your personal preference. The pharmacy match in the entire process favors applicants. They favor what applicants want, where they want to go. And so it's to your advantage to rank sites based on whether or not you can see yourself being there for a full year. Remember, this is a full year commitment. Whether you can be there for a full year, if you think that that site is going to be invested in you as a resident in order to help you grow, in order to prepare you to be an excellent pharmacist by the time that you finish that residency. And if you're looking at a second year residency, that it adequately prepares you to be successful in a second year residency. That's all I'll say about that for right now. Specifically, when we look at the number of rankings that were submitted between people who matched and people who did not match, there's quite a significant difference. So what it means by number of rankings, in order for you to submit a ranking to a site, you have to have interviewed there. So that doesn't mean that they only submitted 5.5 or on average, or anywhere from 5 to 6 applications. That means that they had interviewed at least to 5 or 6 sites, and they submitted a rank list for at least 5 to 6 sites. So they would have at least 5 to 6 chances of obtaining a pharmacy residency or a match in the match. And we see that that's actually pretty different from people who didn't match. So those who matched 5.5 average this past year, those who didn't match only submitted 3 rankings. So that could be for a variety of reasons. There's a lot of confounding variables. One could be that they didn't submit as many applications, and so they weren't able to get as many interviews and rank as many sites. It could also be that they just didn't receive a lot of interview invitations because they were just poorer candidates than some other candidates. Not everybody who participates in the match and not everybody who applies for residency is going to have the same experiences or have applications that are on par with one another. So another thing that I want to mention is it's very crucial for you, if you are considering putting all the time and effort and money into the match, that you really make an outstanding application. You make sure that your letters of recommendation are really superb, that your CV is clean, that you have a lot of experience that you can discuss during your interviews, and you really present yourself well in order to have as many opportunities to match as possible. Now, phase 2 occurs after phase 1, so phase 2 is kind of the remainder of the sites who didn't match, and that does not mean that those sites are bad sites. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply there. It just means that for whatever reason, whether they had high standards or they didn't have the right applicants apply, they just didn't match. And so for those of you who apply and you don't match in the first phase, don't fret. There's still an opportunity for you to apply in the second phase and potentially get a match. And even past the second phase, if you don't match in the second phase, there's something called the Scramble, which is exactly what it sounds like. You are scrambling to try and find a match. You're calling sites, emailing sites, trying to talk with faculty members to give recommendations and get contacts for you. And you're scrambling and sites are scrambling in order to fill those positions. When we look at phase 2, there were just over 1,100 applicants or candidates who applied for phase 2 of the match, and we see that 41.7% of them matched, which is a pretty stark difference from the 71.9% who matched in the first phase. So the first phase is crucial for you if you want to obtain a pharmacy residency to participate in. The reason why I say that is you have the best chance of obtaining a residency if you participate in the first phase of the match. Now, I would also like to say that you don't have to participate in the first phase of the match in order to participate in the second phase. But again, if you're really wanting to obtain a residency, it is to your advantage to decide early that you want to participate in this process to get all of your ducks in a row, all of your information application materials to apply in that first phase of the match, so that not only are you prepared to be successful in the first phase, but if you go on to the second phase, that you can also be successful. Now we see that only 41% of applicants actually matched, but similar to the first phase, when it comes to how applicants matched based on their rankings, 57% of applicants who matched ended up getting their first choice, 22% getting their second choice, and 11% getting their third choice. So when we look at all of the data, overall, what can you expect and what can we glean from the past 5 years and the trends that we've seen in order for you to be not blindsided by the actual match process, and also for you to be hopefully as successful as possible when you are pursuing a residency and participating in the match. Overall, you can expect that 2/3 of applicants who apply will obtain a match at the end of phase 2. Now, this is also to say that 1/3 of those who do apply will not match. So simply because you apply for residencies and even apply for multiple residencies doesn't mean that you're going to match. You have a 1/3 chance of not matching. And so again, this should encourage you and kind of motivate you to make sure that your application is really stellar, that you put in all the hard work, that you do the research, that you're connecting with residency sites in various methods, whether that's at career fairs or going to residency showcases and getting your name out there, talking to faculty members. You want to be as prepared as possible so that you can be part of that 2/3 who match. When we look at phase data, we can see that the best time and the best phase to apply for your best chance of matching is going to be that first phase. 64.8% of applicants are matching in that first phase. And then a fewer percent, 23.7% are matching in that second phase. Now, similar for both phases, and something to keep in mind and consider as you're ranking sites, rank them in order of your preference, because you have about 60% chance of getting, if you match, a 60% chance of getting your number 1 choice and a 22% chance of getting your second choice. which when you add those together is over an 80% chance of getting your top 2 choices. So it's to your advantage to rank in order of your preference. Don't try to rank a site based on how you think they'll rank you. If you think a site is going to rank you as a 2, don't just rank them as a 2 because you think that if you don't get your first choice, well, you'll definitely get them. Somebody else may match to that site, and if they only have one position open, now you are down to your third choice potentially, just based on the way that the algorithm works. So always rank based on whether or not you see yourself being happy, being challenged, being supported in that residency and at that site. And if you don't think those things, don't rank, because chances are you might, if you rank one of the sites that you don't want to go to, if you rank them as number 3, you still have about a 10% chance of matching there if you do match. So if you don't like a site or can't see yourself being there or think you'd be miserable or that they just don't meet your needs and your desires in your practice, don't rank them. And that's totally okay. Again, when we're looking at how people who matched ranked, it's to your advantage, again, to rank as many sites as possible, which means submitting a large number of applications, maybe upwards of 8 applications. Maybe you don't get a couple applications or invitations to interview back, and so you still have 5 or 6 chances to interview, and that means you have 5 or 6 rankings that you can do, which ultimately will increase your opportunity, your odds of obtaining a residency. Because as we see, people who matched ranked more sites and people who didn't match ranked less. So it's to your advantage to rank as many sites as possible. And again, like I mentioned just a little bit ago, only rank sites that you can envision yourself being at and being committed to for a whole year, because this is a 1-year commitment. So that's all the information that I have for you today for the pharmacy match. I hope that all of this data and just briefly reviewing it is helpful for you. I hope that you're able to glean some key details and have a better perspective as you enter the match and consider whether or not you want to participate in this process. I wish that I would have been able to go through all this data and have this prior to entering the match, not because I think it would change my outcome, but I think it would have better prepared me to be successful. And I will be putting out hopefully future videos that discuss a little bit more about my journey to my residency position at a level 1 trauma center and other things that I've learned in my pharmacy journey. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the link below in the comments, and I will get to them and review them as soon as possible. Thank you all, and I hope that you have a good rest of your day and rest of this year.